Many of us have been busy this year, possibly busier, even with parks, restaurants, and businesses closed down. If you haven't been trying to finish Netflix, you've possibly picked up a good book or taken some time to escape what seems like the Twilight Zone and into the land of literature. Cicero said, "A room without books is like a body without a soul." I, for one, am admittedly not an avid reader, and I can honestly say I feel like I'm missing out on something. As part of our Wills and Ways series, Brittany and I dig deeper this episode of Path and Posture, and we explore how art and literature add value to survival. If you haven't heard or seen a prime example of bookish art, then you're going to love the story of Sweet Sequels. Brilliant executions of paint, ink, and a little magic bring stories to life in a unique and one-of-a-kind hand-painted work of art. Miss Haleigh DeRocher, owner and creator of Sweet Sequels, is here now with us to talk about her journey as a mom and a business owner and how she's helping to add hope and a little bit of color to this season of survival. Hi, Haleigh. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi.
So you started Sweet Sequels how long ago?
I started in 2013
Okay.
after I graduated from college.
I was looking at your website today, and it's just incredible. Is there a huge market for bookish art, or would you say, very unique?
There is a market for bookish art for sure.
I've never seen anything like yours, though.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Yeah, it's incredible. When it comes to starting a project from start to finish, talk us through real quick what that process looks like, and what kind of medium you use with your paints and your inspirations. You're so artistic. Explain how this is possible to me.
So, I'm obviously inspired by books. So a lot of times I'll read a book knowing that I want to create art from it. Mm-hmm. So I will pick out quotes and different scenes and stuff that I want to make art for while I'm reading. And then when I'm done with the book, I'll sit down to paint, and I'll sometimes put the movie on if there's a movie for the book. And then I will just start painting and see what happens. And I use acrylic paint and India ink. And when I sit down to paint, it's like I can do it for hours, and it's the only thing I can sit down and do and not get distracted from. And it's very it brings me peace, and it's almost like I don't even know what I'm doing. I just do it, and I paint and paint and paint.
That's amazing. And also amazing that you don't get distracted while you're doing it. So you're also a mother.
Yes.
How do you find time to run your own business? And how many children do you have? Where are you on that front?
So I have 3 children, one on the way.
Oh, congratulations.
And I do pretty much all of my work at night after they go to bed. So I stay up late, and that's what I do.
Yeah.
Sometimes work on the weekends when I can.
Yeah.
But it's mostly night working.
Do you have?
I'm not distracted.
Yes, exactly. And your husband is very supportive, and has he helped you a lot on this journey of your own business? And yeah, that's incredible. That's awesome.
For sure.
When did you first discover that you were artistic and that this was something that really piqued your interest?
I have loved art forever, since I was a little girl.
That's awesome.
And I think the reason why I'm an artist now is because when I was young and I made art, there were always adults in my life, my teachers, my parents, who encouraged me and made me want to do it more. And I think that, I seriously think that had the biggest impact on me growing up, because I feel like if I hadn't been encouraged, then there would have been no reason to keep doing it. So every time I see kids do art, I always encourage them, because you never know what your words can do to encourage someone and what they can accomplish. So.
And how old are your children?
I have an almost 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old.
And have they shown any artistic interests that you've noted or seen?
My daughter likes to draw. My son likes to draw too, but he's very he I don't know, I think he's very like self-conscious about, and he doesn't really want to like put effort into it. So I don't think he's really gonna be that interested in art. I think my daughter might be. She's 3 and she's very imaginative. So
Yeah. During the whole COVID thing, do you think your kids your daughter especially, now that she's had more time to be home and to draw and to color, do you think she's really kind of grown on that front? Have you really kind of encouraged that, being home with your kids more?
we do art projects a lot at home, and they both of them enjoy doing stuff.
Yeah.
Especially when I organize little projects and stuff, but they'll like draw on their own too. They have in my office, they have a little craft area, a little craft table, and all kinds of art supplies, so they can do it whenever they want to.
That's great that you trust them with that, because I get really nervous with my kids and art projects, and I keep everything up high.
And sometimes I regret getting the markers out.
But it's, you let them be creative and see what happens.
Yeah.
They're creative on your walls. So getting back to the professional side of your talents, the sweet sequels, where did the name come from, and what kind of spurred the idea to pursue that?
So I actually rebranded my shop in 2015 after my son was born.
Okay.
When my son was born, that was when I started doing like the baby books, and
which is how Brittany, I think, found you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like the baby blankets and stuff. And when I rebranded, I knew that I wanted to, before I had done things that weren't necessarily, I did a lot of literature-based stuff, but it wasn't all literature-based stuff. And I just decided to focus solely on literature because that was what my audience was more drawn to. And with Sweet Sequels, it was called Peels and Posies before. And with Sweet Sequels, I kind of came up with the idea because I was thinking about my son and how like your child is kind of your sequel. So I don't know.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Like you're the original and they're your legacy, they're your sequel type thing. Yeah, exactly. I like that.
And it was bookish, and it just, I don't know, I liked it, so I went with it.
I love it.
Yeah, it's incredibly unique. I love it so much.
So the baby books, that was one of your first things that you started, you said.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that's one way that Brittany found you. What were the baby books like? Are these originals, or are they like baby versions of like major works of literature? Or?
So they're like babies' guides to literature, baby's guide to Harry Potter. I had a Harry Potter one, baby's guide to Pride and Prejudice, The Hobbit, et cetera, et cetera. And when I first started doing them, I was actually hand painting them.
Wow.
And it was a lot of work.
I'm sure. You've gotten to the point where there's a lot of digital now, right? You do one original.
Right. So now what I do is I paint the pictures for the books, and then I have them scanned into my computer, and I get them printed onto fabric, so I can just sew them up and don't have to paint everything by hand.
Yeah, I can't.
It is so nice.
It speeds up the process. So now
a little bit.
Yeah. Well, Brittany noted that you had a lot of pieces that featured C.S. Lewis quotes, which, of course, Brittany's our C.S. Lewis huge fan.
Well, this segment is specifically on his friendship quote, on how it's not necessarily like philosophy and art, but it adds value to survival. And so I've noticed, it's one of the ways I connected with you was I was looking for something for my son for Narnia, his Narnia nursery. And I was able to get a couple items from you. But yeah, so that's the segment is wills and ways, and how during COVID, all of these things that we don't think necessary have been valuable to our survival.
Things, dance, art, literature, things that Exactly like you said, you don't think they're necessary, but they've really given us a reason or a hope as we've been stranded through this whole thing. But with C.S. Lewis, would you say that he's been one of your major influences, or where do you find a lot of your major influences?
C.S. Lewis is definitely a major influence. His books are so poignant, and his writing, I think what I admire about him most is that he was a great philosophical thinker, and his faith shows through even in his children's works like Narnia. And it's rare to find an author who, nowadays, it's rare to find an author who has those values and is so passionate about sharing them with the world and with children. So yeah, I really appreciate that about him. I think my favorite, I love Narnia, obviously, but I also love the Space Trilogy and Till We Have Faces, and of course all of his nonfiction.
I just read Till We Have Faces. I thought it was so relevant for this time because she wears a veil over her face.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so today.
Yeah, it's so good.
When it comes to those pieces of literature that may have some of the heavier or more complex lessons, do you find it kind of difficult to translate those into things for children? Or what's your thought process while you're creating these things, that knowing they'll go in a nursery or a child's room, or how do you translate that for them?
All of my art, I want it to look beautiful. I want it to be colorful, and to inspire a happy thoughts.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm definitely, when I choose the quotes that I want to feature in my artwork, I try to choose ones that are very thought-provoking, and I don't really plan my paintings before I sit down. I don't sketch or anything. I kind of just do it.
Yeah.
The quote or whatever I'm like trying to encapsulate on my painting, it just sort of like works through me. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Well, Jesus does that, right?
And Haleigh, from your Instagram, we've caught some notes of just some very inspirational things. You are a Christian?
Yes. Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, we've noticed that you use your platform to voice different opinions, and one of them being something along the lines of pro-life. You explain to us your heart toward the unborn, and how you've been using Sweet Sequels to kind of put some momentum behind the pro-life movement.
I started speaking up on my Instagram about my pro-life beliefs a few years ago. And at first it was very daunting because talking about abortion publicly is very taboo. But I felt so convicted by it. I'd read some books, and I've always been pro-life, but I read some books, and like it just always bothers me. And I started speaking up. This past year, I've talked about it a lot because our culture is just so, I know, I look out and I see the darkness, and there's so many lost people. And I feel like it's my obligation as a Christian to at least share, to like at least bring it to people's attention what's happening. Because a lot of people, they have their beliefs that they've always had. They don't question them. They eat up what they hear on media, on social media, and they don't question it. And there's so many lies about abortion that are fed to women and men. And I just can't, in good faith, have a platform of so many people and not talk about it. And it's one of those issues that people don't want to talk about. And I think that more people who are convicted by it should speak up about it.
Absolutely. And what would you say was the turning point for you? Because that's a step of courage. What would you say to someone who's got a platform and they're thinking about, or they have a conviction to speak out, but they're afraid to? What was the turning point for you, and how could that help them?
I don't know that there was like an actual turning point necessarily, but just that I felt like it was time, to just say something. And each time you share, it gets easier. The first time it's like, I don't know if I should say this. I don't want to like step on people's toes. I don't want to, ruffle people's feathers, or, you want to keep the peace with your following. You don't want to lose followers. But at this point, I don't even care if I lose followers. I just want to get the message out. I just want to say what I need to say, and people have heard it and they can digest it. Maybe they'll unfollow me, but they read it, and maybe a few years from now they'll remember it, and something else will spark that the memory of what I said, and maybe they'll change their mind. So I guess my advice to somebody who's thinking about speaking up about it is just do it, because you have nothing to lose, because followers don't matter. People are going to call you mean names, and they're probably going to send you hate messages, but it doesn't matter, because you're doing what's right. And it needs to be talked about more often. If anything's going to change, then people need to start speaking up about it, because the reason why 52% of Americans are pro-abortion or pro-choice is because I think is because a lot of people don't even know what it is, what it means, and what an abortion procedure is. So what needs to happen is people need to talk about it more.
That's great. And we applaud you for your courage and your boldness and faith, and just trusting the Lord to sustain you, sustain your business, sustain these children that are, in jeopardy. And it's wonderful and refreshing to see something against the grain, something against the culture be put out in the light. In this day and age, it seems that if there's an opposing viewpoint, people more so want it to be silenced. And so it's refreshing to see an opposing viewpoint being put forward in boldness and in faith. And so keep doing what you're doing. It's very encouraging. And I know that the Lord is working in it to touch someone's life.
Yeah. And I've gotten lots of messages from people thanking me for speaking up, and saying that me speaking out about it as a business owner or could hurt my business was encouraging to them. And I think a lot of people don't realize that for all the hate that you get, and for all the people who are going to oppose you, there are probably more people who agree with you, and who just have never said anything, and who feel like they can't say anything. So I think like it's a chain reaction. The more you take that step of faith, the more people will follow. So that's how I see it.
And I will say, for anybody who has not yet followed Haleigh, her Instagram stories are just incredibly entertaining. You get like these beautiful works of art, and then all of a sudden, bam, like you're getting this amazing truth, and then it goes back to beautiful works of art.
Yeah, I don't have much filter in the stories.
I love it so much.
I see something, I'm like, yeah, I need to say that. That's what I do.
That's awesome.
I used to not do that, but I get so discouraged by some of the things that I see on Instagram and online in general. And I just, like, I could sit there and like let it eat away at me, or I could just, respond in my own way. And that's what I do.
That's great. We love it. The fear of letting your personal side show, your own opinion show, and somehow it affecting your business. It's a blessing to see that you've seen more positive and people supporting you with your take. But going back to the possible hurt on your business, we have been through a very tough year. How has this year, the whole COVID, Corona, blah, 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 everybody's so tired of hearing about it. How has that affected you? Have you seen any changes? Have you had to reinvent yourself in any way to kind of keep things going for Sweet Sequels?
Not really. My business has stayed pretty well. This year, to start the year, before COVID and all that even happened, I knew that it was going to be a new year, a different year, because I launched my own website, because I'd been on Etsy for years. And so this year in February, I launched my website, and that was a big step. And it was, I was expecting drops in sales, and, I had to relearn everything. And then, a couple months later, a month later, there was the whole pandemic thing, and so I don't know if my sales were more affected by the switch to website or COVID, but I mean, they picked up, and I've had some struggles with getting supplies. My fabric takes so long to get to me now, but it's been a good year, honestly.
Great.
It's been a pretty good year for me, so I'm thankful for that.
Well, with everybody staying in, they need blankets.
Exactly. There's always a demand for blankets when you're.
And when it comes to running your own business, do you rely heavily on other suppliers and friends? And how have they helped you get through the whole pandemic thing? And how have you guys kind of collaborated to keep things going?
Yeah, I have some really good friends that work with me on Instagram. I have my reps, my rep team, and we're just really good friends. They're not really my rep. I mean, they're my reps, but more than anything, they're my friends. And it's been really great having them there through all this, because we talk about everything together. We can complain to each other or vent or whatever, and that's been really good. So,
In a moment of pure honesty, I'm just going to be honest here. I don't read. And and I love your artwork. I think it's beautiful. I see these books. I saw your library on your website, and I'm like, I don't know how this happens. It's so much. My fear is that I think when I start a book, I'm afraid of starting it and it just being a waste of my time and not liking it. Whereas if you start a movie and you go 2 hours in, your time might be wasted if you didn't like it, but it was only 2 hours and you're like, it wasn't like 5 days. So I think that's my fear. But for someone who's afraid, like me, to really get into books and to find another love like literature, what would you say? What's been your spark and what's your drive when it comes to poring over these pages and just falling in love?
So I went through a really bad reading slump for like 2 years probably after my son was born.
Mhm.
And I felt the same way that you did. I didn't want to pick up a book and then feel like it was a waste of time. But really to overcome that, you just have to find a book that's been highly recommended by either your friends, somebody whose opinion you trust, and then stick with it. Otherwise, if you don't have friends who read either, then classic literature, in my opinion, is so much better than any modern fiction you'll ever find. So, pick up Pride and Prejudice or Jane Eyre or Tess of the D'Urbervilles or anything by Edith Wharton. She's my favorite.
Mhm.
Yeah, like pick up some classic fiction, and you have to give yourself time to sort of get used to the writing style and get used to the different it's a different time period, so you have to give yourself time to get used to it. But the more that you read, the more that you enjoy it. And it's something that you have to train your brain to do. So it's not like especially with classic literature. Sometimes you can pick up a work of modern fiction and read it in a couple days and enjoy it, but ultimately, like, you probably won't remember it. You won't really get anything out of it. So I always advocate for training your brain to read classic literature, because you will be affected by it. You will be touched by it. And you will learn from it. You just have to train your brain to enjoy it.
Okay.
It takes a few books, really. Like, you just have to get through them, and you have to. Sometimes with classical literature, I will say, to help yourself get in that, to help train your brain to enjoy classic literature, it helps to look into the background information, like learn about the author, learn about the time period, and then also like audiobooks can help. If you feel like you're having a hard time reading it, then turn an audiobook on while you're cooking dinner or while you're cleaning or something. And then another thing that is helpful, especially like reading Dickens for me, is to watch the adaptation, the movie or TV adaptation while you're reading. Sometimes I'll like when I was reading earlier this year, I read a lot of Dickens, and I never read Dickens before. So I read Little Dorrit, which was super long, and Bleak House, both of those super long. And so I would read, a few chapters, whatever, and then I would watch the episode that covered those chapters. And so I would be reading it, and then I'd be getting extra context by watching the corresponding episodes for those books. And that helped me enjoy those books a lot. So
Mariah is a Poldark fan.
Yes.
Poldark. The books are good. I read the first two.
So is the show.
Well, I read the books and then I watched the show. Yeah, it's amazing. Books are better. You get more context into Ross Poldark's life.
I actually put the books on like my Christmas wish last year, Brittany.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, they were on there.
She definitely needs audio, the audio.
Well, because the series on BBC or whatever, it ended too early. And so I'm like, okay, I need to know what else happened. So I put like the last few Poldark books on my Christmas list.
There are a ton of books in that series. I think I had the first 6. I think there are 12.
Yeah.
But he wrote them, like the first book. I don't remember the exact dates, but I think he wrote the first book in the 50s or the 30s or something, 40s. I think it was the 50s, Ross Poldark. And then the last one, he wrote a year before he died, and it was like in 2014 or something.
Wow.
So he spent like over 50 years writing this series.
That's incredible.
Oh my God.
There were several points at which he was like, okay, I'm done. And then his fans, convinced him to keep writing.
Yeah, no, it's great. What's been one of the more unique things that someone has asked you to illustrate or create for them?
I've asked her to illustrate the Inklings for years.
I still need to do that. And I still want to do that. I don't know why I haven't.
It's coming. Haleigh, we're looking at your studio behind you. What are some of the things that you have in the works coming up later this year? Or what do you have kind of churning in your brain that you think is going to come to fruition here soon?
So I recently launched my newest illustrated book, Pride and Prejudice,
Nice.
which is available now for pre-order. And then I also am planning on doing more illustrated books. I'll have at least 1 and hopefully 2 more before the end of the year. One of them might be Christmas themed. One of them was winter themed. And then I also recently launched a book planner, a reading planner. And I actually have some new products coming that are kind of based around my reading planner, but they're little notepads. So they're notepads that have book reviews on them, but they're little, so you can tear off, you can write down your book review as you're reading your book, and you can tear it off and like stick it in your book when you're done reading. So that way, if you come back to the book later, you know what your review was. And I also have some new mugs coming and some other fun stuff.
Love it.
That's a really cute idea. Or if you lend the book to somebody, they can find it in there. That's a really cute idea.
I'd put it in a library book. I'd be like, stay away.
That's a good idea too. If you borrow a book from the library, you write your review down.
Yeah,
and then stick it in there.
Yep. You got to let somebody know. Don't waste your time.
This one was horrible.
Yeah. Well, and if people want to find you, where are you? Where's your internet footprint? You said you just started your own website. So what's your website?
My website is sweetsequels.com. You can sign up for my newsletter. I send out news, whenever I have drops or new products, whatever, I'll send that in an email so you can keep up with me that way. Otherwise, I'm on Instagram at sweetsequels, and I'm on Pinterest. So yeah.
And have you completely shut down your Etsy page?
No, actually, I still have my Etsy page up, and all I sell on there is digital downloads of my artwork. So you can go onto my Etsy page if you're just looking for a digital download to print for yourself. I don't have all my paintings on there, but I have a lot of different ones on there, and every week. I try to do every week. I have a digital download of the week, which is only 50 cents.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast and just for sharing with us your talents, your vision, how the Lord's using you with your platform for life. And it's been very inspirational talking with you. And I feel like I'm going to pick up a book here soon. I'll take some of your recommendations. But yeah, we hope our listeners really just were inspired by you as well, and hope that maybe you get some orders here soon for finishing out this year for your Pride and Prejudice as well. And just God bless you, and thank you so much for everything you're doing for the kingdom and just expressing your arts and your talents and your abilities.
Well, thanks for having me.
Our 4-part Wills and Ways series is centered around the struggles that many of us have felt through isolation and the pandemic. But thank God, where there's a will, there's a way. Touching back to our inspiration for this series, a few words from C.S. Lewis. Lewis writes, "Friendship is unnecessary, like philosophy, like art, like the universe itself, for God did not need to create. It has no survival value. Rather, it's one of those things which give value to survival." If you're a book lover and you want the world to know it, or you just want to find the next novel to dive into, head over to sweetsequels.com for some talented, one-of-a-kind bookish art. You'll not only find words of art transformed into works of art, but we hope that you also gain insight into how literature can add value to this pandemic and this season of survival. J.K. Rowling said that if you don't like to read, you haven't found the right book, which means that some of us, myself included, have some book searching or soul searching to do. To help kick off that process, I want to close this in a word of prayer. Father God, we thank you so much for just the inspiration that we can find in literature. We thank you for art and the expression that we can do with that, with the paints and colors, and just bring works of art and words of literature to life. And we just thank you so much for Sweet Sequels and for Haleigh and her passion and for sharing that with us, her passion for art, for literature, and for her family. We pray that you would bless her business and bless her family. And we just thank you for her sweetheart and her love for you and her passion just for works of literature and just creating beauty in a world that hasn't necessarily seen what she's seen in these books that she's read, but she wants to show everyone. And we just thank you for the creativity that you've blessed her with. And we ask God that if we don't have passions in these areas, if we're just not sure of how to explore art and literature, that you would just lead us and guide us and give us a spirit of adventure to dive into something new, to try something new, and to be fearless and hopefully find something that just kind of fits our likes and helps us to learn more about ourselves and more about you and more about just the people that you've created to be beautiful in these unique forms when it comes to literature, when it comes to painting. And we just thank you so much for giving us that spirit of creativity and that spirit of boldness to go forward and try new things. And we pray all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Someday be part of me